Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast with your host, Bruce Hutchin, episode number 275. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin. And I'm going to bring a gentleman on the show today, Wally Carmichael, who is the host of Men of Abundance. And he has his own podcast. And I've got a number of emails from people saying, hey, how do you start a podcast? What's a podcast about? How much work is it? All those questions. So I've asked Wally to come on and give us a special edition. What is podcasting? And for that matter, what does it take to start a small business? Because podcasting is your own small business. So if you have a desire to open a business in the outdoor world, you're going to enjoy the show today. So stay tuned. Hey, listener, don't forget to text 33444 Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and I got a special guest on today, Wally Carmichael. Now, Wally is the host of Men of Abundance. You might wonder, where's the whitetails today? Well, a lot of you have asked me about podcasting, so Wally's graciously, since he has his own podcast and we're both part of Podcast Paradise, he graciously said he'd be on the show. So, Wally, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Bruce. It's been looking forward to this.
And me as well, because the podcast industry is growing exponentially, and a lot of us have struggles. But before we get into podcasting, I read your bio, and life wasn't easy for you. So I want to talk about life and how to be an overcomer, because a lot of my listeners, there's a lot of issues. The veterans have some issues, and then just going through life, there are issues. So let's talk about where you were brought up and how you overcame, the beginnings.
Yeah, I was brought up born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona, west side of Phoenix, southwest Phoenix to be more specific. I went to grade school, high school, all pretty much on that side, and it's a gangbanger area, really. If I was to go there right now, I would have a hard time walking through there unless I had, a couple guys next to me who, know the neighborhood, because it was a pretty rough neighborhood. In fact, if you have ever seen the movie Spare Parts with George Lopez, that movie's about Carl Hayden High School. That's the high school I graduated from. And, let's put it bluntly, being a white boy growing up in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, I think it was about 10% Caucasian at the high school I went to, and I wouldn't change anything at this point. Had a great time ultimately, but it was a rough neighborhood and it was a rough upbringing, and quite frankly, a lot of my friends that I grew up with, some of them didn't make it and some of them ended up in jail, but many of them are great men and women today, and that's how I ended up in the military. Quite frankly, I was, working two jobs, trying to make ends meet, and, as a young man, very young man. So I joined the Army at 20 for the reasons, a lot of people say that they joined for patriotic reasons. Quite frankly, most people join the military to get away from something or to, kind of go towards something. I was going towards two things. One, to get away from the environment that I was in, and two, to take advantage of that education. And then there I was 25 years later and retired as an Army medic almost a year and a half ago.
Wow. And so where did you serve?
Oh, goodness. Primarily, I was all over the place. I started off in San Antonio for my Army medic training. From there, I went to Central America. I was in Panama for 4 years, went all over South and Central America. After Panama, I was in North Carolina. No, I went back to San Antonio to go through some advanced medical training, very advanced medical training. Went on to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, jumped out of airplanes with them for a while. I jumped while I was in Panama as well with the Special Ops Unit. And then from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, I went to Germany for 3 years, then to El Paso for 4 years, then to Hawaii, then to Fort Hood, Texas, and then back in Hawaii. And spent a total of 9 years on active duty in Hawaii. And that's where I'm at now. I retired a year and a half ago and stayed right here and living the dream on a beach in Hawaii.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you for your service, sir. And it sounds like it was very interesting. That's for darn sure. And let's talk about how you were able to overcome, one, being a minority and being in a place where, unfortunately, people did get shot and it was an uncomfortable place to be unless, like you said, you knew the streets. So what got you through that?
Good friends, just sticking with the network. They always say your network is your net worth. So that doesn't just mean money. I'm still very, very close friends with a lot of those guys that I went to high school with, and quite frankly, the guys in my neighborhood, because many of the guys that were in my neighborhood ended up going to other schools. Because I don't know if I don't know if it's the same everywhere else, but when you continuously get in trouble at school, they send you to, it's not a charter school, but it's basically a school for the kids that just can't get along. Basically it's almost a prison school, if you will, where there's more structure and they walk with their hands behind their back and type of stuff. Well, those are the guys that I grew up with. So many of those guys that I grew up with didn't really go to my school, but really we just stuck together. We stuck together really closely. And the funny thing is as we grew up, a lot of those guys that we were fighting with, a lot of the gangbangers and stuff, we just grew up, and we just kind of realized, what the heck are we fighting over? Most at the time was because we like rock and roll and you guys like hip hop and rap or whatever it is, some fighting over somebody's music or territory or something like that. It was all just juvenile, but the fact is it was still a pretty dangerous environment to be in, but it was mostly just friends, just sticking together.
And thanks for sharing that. Now, in your bio, you said you've been an entrepreneur at heart, and a lot of the listeners, they're starting little companies in the outdoor industry. What's some of the advice you'd give to the listeners about, being an entrepreneur and trying stuff and failing and then trying some more?
Exactly that. I mean, seriously, if you have an idea that you want to kick off and start a business from scratch, regardless of what it is, first thing I would say is network with people that are doing what you want to do, even to the point to where if you have to pay somebody, if you have the funds, if you have the means to pay a coach, somebody who's coaching in that industry, that will just catapult you, save you a whole lot of time and money ultimately. But if you're doing it on your own, you have a viable business, I would recommend a book. Quite frankly, I would recommend a book called Will It Fly by Pat Flynn. And that book is basically designed to let you know, to give you an idea, is your business, is your product, is your idea a viable business? And it gives you a very good map to make that decision. And it will help you because you want to get proof of concept. You want to make sure that just because it's something that you like, will it be a good business? Is the marketplace ready for it? And then just do it. Just do it. Don't analyze it too much. Analysis is paralysis, and you'll just be there years from now and then ultimately not launching the business. So I say just do it and learn as you go.
And throughout the podcast today, I'm going to be asking for more insights because Pat Flynn, I know who he is. I listen to his podcasts all the time because podcasting, what I'm doing, it's a small business. And how are you monetizing your business today? Right
now, I am monetizing my business primarily through affiliate programs, through my website podcast that I have. Other podcasters are looking for great websites. So I'm affiliated with the podcast platform that I'm using with podcast websites. And I'm monetized through Amazon. I have products that people want and use, and occasionally I'll put them up on my website. I also am affiliated with audio. Goodness, I can't think of the name of it right now. It's audiobooks, Audible. I'm affiliated with Audible. So when people click on any of the books that I listed in the show notes, Audible's associated with Amazon as well, so I get a kickback off of that. And I'm just now getting to the point to where people are looking at me for sponsorship because they're seeing my numbers going up. They're seeing that I'm getting more downloads, and that's what sponsors want to see. They want to see how many people are listening to the show that they can potentially make as customers. So I'm kind of critical on who I'm going to sponsor with, and I'm very critical about who I affiliate with because it's got to resonate with not just my brand, but my personal values.
Now, let's talk about the details. I know podcast websites we've been going since August 31st, 2015. We're about at 83,000 downloads. So tell us how long you've been doing this and where you're at on your daily, weekly, or monthly downloads.
Right now, my podcast has officially been launched It launched July 4th, 2016, so just over 3 months. 45 episodes in, 46 episodes in. And what was the other question?
How many downloads have you had?
Oh, yeah, right now I'm just right at about 4,000 downloads, total downloads.
Okay. And you're attracting sponsorships. I find that interesting because at where we're at in a year and a half, I haven't been approached. I've approached some other people and haven't put it together. Now, why are these people coming to you, one? And two, how did they find you?
Number one, they're finding me because of the name of the podcast. Almost everybody that I talk to, they absolutely love the name of the podcast, Men of Abundance. So really, they're looking at me, and quite frankly, I don't have the downloads that most of them are looking for, but they are watching. They've contacted me and saying, once you get to where, we want you to be, then we'll look at sponsoring. But mostly it's because of the name of the podcast.
And let's jump right into that right now. But before we do, how do people get a hold of you? Where's your website or Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram? How do people get in touch with you?
Primarily off the website, menofabundance.com. All of my social media links are up there on the upper left-hand corner of the screen, but I'm on Twitter quite a bit at Wally Carmichael, and I'm on Facebook as well, at Wally Carmichael as well. And, of course, I also have a Men of Abundance fan page. So if you just search Men of Abundance in Facebook, you'll find the fan page and an open group on Facebook as well.
Now, how did you learn to start your podcast? What did you do to start your podcast?
So what I did was once I got the idea to start a podcast, ironically enough, as things go, when you start putting something in your mind, things that were already there start popping up. And I was introduced to a couple of different podcasters, Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas. And when John Lee Dumas mentioned on one of his podcasts, as he often does, as I was listening to it, that he has a free course, I took his free course. And as I went through it, I devoured that course. I think I went through that entire course in less than a week. I mean, I really did. And then right away, I just went right in and bought his full-on course, got fully and deep into Podcaster's Paradise. And I think it was about 3 months after first discovering the course, the free course, is when I actually launched my podcast. So I had a lot of help, both with the course, the free course, the paid course, and then, of course, the everybody that's in Podcaster's Paradise. And I took advantage of getting an accountability group together. There were 3 of us. One ended up dropping off, but the other one, we stuck together and we pushed each other. He already had his podcast going, and he really just kind of helped push me and get my podcast up and running. And
that's one thing in the post show let's talk about, because I've been in a couple of different accountability groups through Podcaster's Paradise, and for whatever reason, growth and transfers and other life events have come. So I'd like to talk to you about that. I'm going to make a note here. Accountability. Okay, I got to do that. And folks, what we're talking about is the adage goes iron sharpens iron, and by being with fellow people trying to do exactly what you're trying to do, and it becomes an accountability group that we're going to do what we say we're going to do each week, but then it becomes a mastermind group because we're getting smart together, and we don't have to walk through the minefield. Somebody else has already gone through that, so we pick each other's brains and figure it out. So if you're looking at a business in the outdoor industry, align yourself with people that you trust, you like, your goals and beliefs are parallel. And once you do that, hold yourselves accountable. So let's spin it up right now. What is Men of Abundance? If somebody goes to your page, what are they going to see?
Yeah, Men of Abundance originally started out because I am writing a book called Living Your Life of Abundance. And as I was going through and writing the book chapter by chapter, I realized there's too much of me injected into the book, and I didn't want all of me and all of my background and all of my lifestyle in the book. I wanted other people in the book as well. So in podcasting, as amazing as it is, I was introduced to Ryan Daniel Moran's Freedom Fastline. And Ryan wanted to get in contact and have one-on-one conversations with guys like Grant Cardone and, the guys from the Shark Tank and all these different people in different industries. But, of course, he wasn't going to be able to – he would have to pay a lot of money to talk with these guys. So what he did was he created this conference. in Austin, and where he would invite all of these speakers to come, of course, and he would pay them. And then he had guests come who were going to pay him so that he could pay his guests. And I thought, well, that's amazing. And then that's when about the time I discovered I could be a podcaster. I could start my own podcast. And I did basically the same thing. I started my podcast so that I could talk with other influencers and gather information about other people living a life of abundance, and specifically men. But I do talk to women on the show as well, because let's face it, we have a lot to learn from women, right?
Yes.
So really the whole thing about Men of Abundance is paying it forward, living a life of abundance in everything that we do in life, in our relationships, in our faith, in our vocation, whether that's a job or a business or both. If you have a job and a side hustle, we talk a lot about that on the show. We talk a lot about fatherhood. I've had guests on out of the Navy SEAL on, David, who wrote the book about Navy SEALs and how they raise their sons. We talk a lot about relationships. We talk about, quite frankly, we talk a lot about business. And I have, since I'm retired, since I'm a veteran, entrepreneur at home, an entrepreneur. I still work a full-time job as well. I attract veteran entrepreneurs. So we talk a lot about that. We just have a great time. We talk a lot about different stuff. The show generally, I want it to be 30 to 40 minutes. But hey, sometimes the conversations just go on, and they're very, very amazing conversations. And we just have a conversation. We just talk and share our kick in the gut moment. I like for my guests to come on and share that moment in life, whether it was personal or business. It was just a kick in the gut, because anybody who's trying to progress in life, you're going to have failures. Don't try to avoid them. Those are fuel for your fire. Those are nutrition for your brain. Those failures are where you learn. Then we go right into talking about that pivot point, that enough is enough, that point in your life where you said, this is enough. I'm not going to live this way no more. I'm not going to be consumed by porn and alcohol and drugs, and I'm not going to be consumed by working for some guy or some person that I just can't stand, that doesn't treat me right. I'm not going to live this way. And they make that pivot point, they make that decision. We go into that, and then we basically talk about what they're doing at this point in life, how they're helping other people in their community, how they're helping their family, and so on. And some of these conversations just are amazing. And there's tears shed from time to time, and there's a lot of laughter. When I was talking with, I had Jay Papazon on the show. He's the co-author of The One Thing, and him and Jeff Woods, who is the vice president of the One Thing team and host of a podcast called The Mentee, they played a little practical joke on me at the beginning of the episode, so you can go and listen to that. But, we just have a good time and talk man stuff that most men feel they can't talk about. And then I have a community associated with that as well, that I'm building, where men can go in there and we can just, I try to keep it just men. On the internet, you never really know, they can have aliases and stuff, but I do try to keep that just men so that we can have those conversations that, quite frankly, some of us can't have with our peers, unfortunately. And I'd say, find those circles, because you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you can't have those hard conversations with your peers that you live around, that you're hanging around with, that you're out, out talking with them. I know years ago, it's been many years since I've been out hunting. I grew up in Arizona, hunting deer, elk, rabbit in my backyard, basically. When men are out, we talk, and it's good to have those conversations.
Yeah, you just said a huge amount of information, and listeners, to become better, you're going to hang around the people that you want to become like, because you're going to model. And we always used to say, if you run with coyotes, you're going to become a coyote. You could say, if you run with a lion, you become a lion, or fly with the eagles, you're going to become an eagle. However you want to word it, but there isn't a lot of truth. That is truth. And the other thing is, I think of yesterday, I had coffee with Justin, and Justin's a friend that I met, and I mentor people. I've been doing that for years, mentor young men, and it's just amazing. A couple of things popped out. One, something that I call the heart of the matter, and very few men get to the heart of the matter, and it sounds like, Wally, that you do on your show. So guys, tune in to Men in Abundance, but more than that, be real with your friends. Be real, not only with your wife and family, but find some guys you can be real with, because we all have issues. We all have challenges. It goes on, and as time compresses and the stresses come up, be it money, be it relationships, whatever, we need each other. And the other part of that is faith. Wally, talk about faith.
Oh my goodness. I grew up in a faith, but I didn't really associate with any particular faith. I just grew up believing in God. And I say it just like that, and I hope you're okay with that, because I don't say, the universe and all that kind of stuff. And, it's one and the same if you care to say it that way. But as I went through life, as I said, I had issues. The way I was brought up, my dad was a philanderer, and he, there was porn around all the time, and that was just the environment I grew up in. So I carried that into my adulthood, and then I met this wonderful woman. That was a blind date my second year in Panama, after my second year, and she was Catholic and growing up, and she's from Panama. So I was introduced to the Catholic faith, and I'll be honest, there's some things that I struggle with the Catholic faith, but it's my belief that if you don't believe in something, you'll fall for anything. And this wonderful woman, really, I don't know where I'd be without her. And I mean that sincerely. This December, we'll be married 25 years. And it's just growing in my faith and growing in my relationship with God is number one over faith or anything, because ultimately that's my maker, and that's who guides me.
And when you think about that, a lot of the listeners on the show are men and women of faith. There's no question about it. And that gets outside the walls of the church, if you want, because relationships, and Justin and I were talking about this yesterday, relationships are critical for man to man. But in my belief, the number one relationship is the relationship with God, because I mess up, I screw up, I sin, just like everybody else, and I'm not putting myself in the group because I'm responsible. But I always know I have a go-to guy that's going to say, okay, consequences, yes, but what did we learn? How did you become better? How are you going to share that? And you'd be surprised how many things in life that hurt at the time, but then downstream, years later, all of a sudden you're using that experience to help somebody else. Your thoughts on that, Wally?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you can go so many ways with that. I recently talked to somebody on my show. It's a very young couple who help people with marriage, and they're much younger than I am. They help people with marriage, and they help people with relationships. And I asked that question, how can you help somebody after not having so many experiences? But they truly have experiences, and they have the education as well to counsel. But I want to make it clear, one of the things that I say all the time is, yes, my religion is Catholic. My faith is in God. And I never have a hang-up with what anybody's religion is. Even though we pray to God, we may worship differently. Ultimately, we're all on the same path, and we're all following the same God. And that's my feelings about it. And I've just gotten so much power and so much strength from God that's ultimately, every morning I sit here. First thing I do when I get up in the morning is, even before I get out of bed, I start a prayer. As soon as my mind opens up and I start thinking about who I'm thinking about that day, I send a prayer out to somebody. I send my grateful thoughts, and then I roll out of bed, and I may sit here and meditate on that a little bit, think about it as I'm having my cup of coffee, and then go on with my day. That's
so interesting, and we're all in the same boat. And as I told one of my sons, I said, let God row the boat, and you fly fish. You just get in the bow of the boat, and you do what you're supposed to do, and let somebody else row it. And if we turn over our lives, and this is hard, folks, it's really hard for me, but if we turn over our lives and let God row the boat, then we can do life. We really can, and we already know somebody has our back. Now, Wally was a combat medic, so he was really happy somebody had his back when he was in country. Yes, Wally?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And I don't know what it is about being in that environment, but when I wasn't really as much in as much conflict as many of my peers. But when you're there working and you're laying in bed and water rounds are going over your head, I'll tell you what, some people find God real quick.
And I don't mean this as a pun, but amen to that, because so many times we've been, there it is, the finality of everything, and you go, there's no way out of here, but there is a way. And
absolutely.
And, it works. And a lot of people realize at that point in time, it isn't anything that they can do. So there is, there is a God. That's the simplest way I can say that. Wally, it's hard to believe, but we just blew through 30 minutes of the show. Yeah. So it always happens that way when you have a really good conversation. So Wally, why don't you give some shout outs and then we'll wrap the show.
Yeah, since we were talking about podcasting and everything, I would just love to give a shout out to the whole Podcasters Paradise team with John and Kate and just everybody, you yourself as well, because you and I have interacted in the community. Just an amazing experience to be with such a large group of people, all kind of in the same industry, if you will, in podcasting, with everybody with their own thought processes and different types of messages, but we're just helping each other out without any issues whatsoever. And that's why, that is living a life of abundance, as opposed to that life of scarcity of, if I share this information, then, maybe they're going to be my competition. Just don't worry about that kind of stuff. Be abundant in everything you do and lift people up. The more people, if you can have anything you want in life, just help others get what they want. And that's what the community is all about. And I just have to give a shout out to those guys.
Now, do you use a podcast website for your hosting?
I do, yeah. And I give a shout out to them guys as well, because Mark Asquith and everybody over there at Men of Abundance, everybody over there at Podcasters Paradise, Ramona Rice, goodness, you ask a question and there Ramona is on it, like right away. And everybody else, there's so many people over there that help as well. So I'm a part of both communities.
Yeah, and it is, because I followed the same path as Wally did back in March, and we were founding members of podcast websites with Karen and Lester and, of course, Mark Asquith. And folks, they helped me get into this business, and we're 83,000 downloads later, this is my 274th episode. And, in about 18 months. So a lot of work. It isn't easy. And I'll footnote everything. It is work, but it's a great way to build your brand, and you don't have to do it 5 days a week like I do it. You can do it once a week and bring people in and talk about what you're passionate about. And that's the biggest thing. I'm passionate about whitetail hunting. And so
I got to tell you, Bruce, I want to jump in right there.
Sure.
I've listened to your podcast, and I'll straight up, it's not normally, I'm very picky on what I listen to, what I put into my mind, and it all depends on where I'm at in life and what I'm doing, what my focus is. And quite frankly, my focus right now is not hunting whitetail. Especially out here in Hawaii, we don't have any. we have pigs out here, but they hunt with knives. They don't hunt with guns out here. Knives and dogs. But it's just amazing. When I listen to your show and the stuff that you're talking about, it takes me back to growing up on the Mogollon Rim out in Arizona and hunting. I mean, we spend weeks out there in the middle of nowhere, and it just takes me back to that time. And I truly enjoy the couple of episodes that I've listened to. And your podcast is just blowing up, dude. It's just amazing to see what you've done with it.
And thank you so much for that. So, Wally Carmichael, on behalf of thousands of listeners across North America, here at Whitetail Rendezvous, thank you for sharing. And listeners, get a hold of Wally. Get a hold of me. Email me at whitetailrendezvous@gmail.com and say, Bruce, how does this all work with the podcasting? Again, you got to slice out some time. But there's people like Wally and I and Ramona, Mark Asquith and Karen, John Lee Dumas and Kate Erickson, now Dumas, that will help you. And these people are very successful. Wally's very successful. I'm very successful because of you, the listeners. So tune into that. So Wally, again, thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Bruce.
Make sure you listen to the next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're going to have Alex Rutledge and Ben Moore. They're going to talk about the new business, a new TV show that they have, American Roots Outdoors TV. And it talks about heritage, family, the Constitution, faith, and of course, hunting whitetails. So you're going to want to tune in. It's going to be a great show.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.